Imagine someone handing you like a complex mechanical tool, right? And then firing a jet engine inside your living room and telling you that if you don't operate that tool perfectly in the next, say, 3 seconds, you lose everything.
Yeah, I mean, no one would call that foolproof.
Right. You definitely wouldn't call it simple. Yet that is exactly the scenario that millions of people buy into when they purchase a pump-action shotgun for home defense.
It's genuinely fascinating how deeply ingrained that modern folklore has become, you know?
Uh-huh.
Like, the prevailing cultural wisdom just tells us that you grab a shotgun, rack the slide, point it in the general direction of the problem, and the situation just magically resolves itself.
Exactly. It's treated as this absolute settled truth. But what if that comforting sort of cinematic law is actually setting you up for failure?
Which is a terrifying thought.
It really is. So, welcome to today's deep dive. We are stripping away the Hollywood fantasy and looking at home defense through the cold, hard lens of science.
And we have some incredible source material for this today.
We do. Our grounding material is this comprehensive, meticulously researched article published in April 2026 by Valortech. The author is Herfel, who has, what, 3 decades of experience as a firearms
Yeah,
instructor?
30 years. And he evaluates this entire debate, the shotgun versus the handgun, not based on nostalgia, but on actual human performance under acute stress, along with biomechanics and acoustic physics.
So have you ever just accepted a piece of common knowledge because you've heard it repeated 1,000 times in movies or, I don't know, internet forums? Because the mission of this deep dive is to evaluate home defense based on what an average person can actually control when everything goes wrong, under chaos, fear, and extreme time pressure. Okay, let's unpack this.
Well, the most fundamental error people make when they visualize a home defense scenario is
Yeah.
projecting their base-like competence into a full-blown emergency.
Right.
They imagine themselves exactly as they are on, like, a calm Saturday afternoon at the shooting range. You know, they're awake, their balance is perfect, they're wearing hearing protection.
Staring down a well-lit lane at a stationary piece of paper.
Exactly. But in reality, a home defense situation strips literally all of those advantages away.
So let's put you, the listener, in that reality. Imagine waking up at 3 in the morning to the sound of breaking glass. You have profound sleep inertia. Your heart rate instantly spikes from resting to uh, maybe 150 beats per minute.
Yeah, an immediate massive spike.
And you're navigating a dark, narrow hallway filled with your own furniture, and your family is somewhere in the house. Your body is basically sounding a massive chemical alarm.
And that chemical alarm fundamentally alters your physiology. I mean, the physiological research detailed in the article, specifically drawing on work by Anderson and colleagues, looks at the physical mechanics of acute stress.
What actually happens to us in that moment?
Well, when your brain registers a mortal threat, your sympathetic nervous system completely takes over. It dumps adrenaline and triggers this massive vasoconstriction.
Okay, let me stop you right there. Vasoconstriction. Keep it simple for me. What is that actually doing to my body right then and there?
It means your body is physically rerouting blood away from your extremities, so your fingers and your toes. And it's pushing all that blood into your core and your major muscle groups to prepare you to either sprint or fight for your life.
Wow.
Yeah, your brain is prioritizing gross motor movement over fine manipulation. So the practical result is that your hands literally lose their dexterity. They essentially turn into clumsy flippers.
Oh man, so the very moment you need precise control over a mechanical device, your body actively degrades your ability to use your finger.
Exactly, and it goes beyond just your hands, too.
Mm.
Biggs and colleagues found that under direct fire stress, people experience a massive reduction in situational awareness due to perceptual narrowing.
Perceptual narrowing, meaning tunnel vision.
Tunnel vision, yeah, but also auditory exclusion. Your visual cortex literally restricts peripheral information to force you to focus entirely on the apex threat.
Yeah.
Your vision tunnels, your auditory processing changes, and this is the kicker, your brain's bandwidth for processing complex sequential information just plummets.
It's like trying to thread a needle while riding a roller coaster in the dark. Your body is desperately trying to survive, and the emergency doesn't magically lower the standard for how well you need to perform.
No, it actually raises the consequences of every single physical weakness.
Right, so if your body is physically betraying you, the last thing you want is a tool that requires a massive amount of physical coordination just to hold upright.
Which forces us to look very critically at the physical size and the mechanical requirements of the tools you're trying to use in that confined environment. The spatial footprint is a huge liability.
Let's look at the hard numbers on that footprint from the Valortech source. A standard service-size handgun, like, say, the Glock 17 Gen 5 MOS, is roughly 8 inches long and weighs about 33 ounces when it's fully loaded.
Barely 2 pounds.
Right. On the other hand, a typical defensive pumped shotgun, like a Mossberg 590, is almost 39 inches long and weighs around 6.3 pounds. You are maneuvering a yardstick made of steel and plastic around tight corners.
It's a decisive difference indoors. I mean, you're trying to pivot a 39-inch lever in a hallway that might only be 36 inches wide. And remember, all while your spatial awareness is completely degraded by that tunnel vision we talked about.
Wait, hold on. Let me play devil's advocate for a second here. A lot of people argue that the extra weight of a shotgun is actually a huge advantage.
Oh, the recoil argument.
Yeah. Isn't a heavier gun supposed to absorb recoil? It just seems like basic physics. Wouldn't a heavy 6-pound long gun kick significantly less than a light 2-pound handgun?
I always hear that argument, and what's fascinating is how the physics actually play out when you evaluate what each platform is firing. The author breaks this down using the official recoil formulas from SAAMI, the Sporting Arms and Ammunition Manufacturers Institute.
Okay, so what does SAMI say?
Well, recoil isn't just about the weight of the gun. It's driven by the mass and the velocity of the payload leaving the barrel relative to the weight of the firearm itself.
Okay, so the energy of the explosion pushing forward dictates the energy pushing backward into your shoulder.
Exactly. So let's compare the actual ammunition. A high-quality defensive 9mm handgun round, like the Federal 124-grain HST, travels at about 1,150 feet per second.
Right.
Now look at the shotgun. A standard 12-gauge defensive double-aught buckshot load travels at a nearly identical speed, around 1,140 to 1,145 feet per second. The velocities are effectively as high.
Wow. Okay, but the payload mass has to be entirely different, right?
Dramatically different. The 9mm is launching a single projectile that weighs a tiny fraction of an ounce. The shotgun is launching well over an ounce of lead, usually 9 separate pellets all at once.
Oh, wow.
Because that payload multiplier is so massive, it completely overwhelms the weight advantage of the gun. The shotgun delivers a materially greater, vastly more violent recoil impulse into the user.
That makes perfect sense when you actually break down the math. That heavy 6-pound gun doesn't magically erase the fact that you're setting off an exponentially larger explosion.
Exactly. And that heavy recoil impulse isn't just uncomfortable. It physically displaces you. It disrupts your sight alignment, knocks you off balance.
And it does all this at the exact moment when your physical coordination is already compromised by terror and vasoconstriction.
Right. You are dealing with all of this physical disruption while trying to keep that extra 30 inches of barrel from catching on a door frame. The shotgun demands an immense amount of physical space to orient and immense physical strength to just control.
So if you're already fighting a massive spatial burden and brutal recoil just to hold the gun, the cognitive burden of actually operating it has to become the next major point of failure.
Right. Oh, absolutely. And this gets to one of the most persistent and frankly dangerous myths out there, the idea that pump shotguns are mechanically simple to use.
Oh, yeah. People call it an amateur's tool all the time. Just point and click, they say, or it's so simple you literally can't mess it up.
But the mechanical reality is a completely different story. If you look at Glock's documentation, you and I know how a modern semi-automatic pistol works. You press the trigger, and the expanding gas from the cartridge does the vast majority of the work for you.
Right. It automatically extracts the empty casing, ejects it, and chambers a brand new round.
Exactly. The user's cognitive requirement is simply to press the trigger again. But Mossberg's manuals state that a pump action requires the user to manually move the forearm fully rearward and fully forward to cycle the action.
Here's where it gets really interesting, I think. Calling a pump shotgun simple under stress is like saying driving a manual transmission is simple while you're navigating stop-and-go traffic during a panic attack.
That is a great analogy.
Right. Sure, the concept of a clutch is simple to explain on a whiteboard, but executing the timing and the physical force flawlessly when your brain is literally screaming at you to flee is a totally different story.
It hits the nail on the head because it illustrates the mechanism of failure perfectly. With a pump-action shotgun, to fire a second shot, you are entirely responsible for the physical extraction and chambering sequence.
Which means?
You must manually pull the forearm fully rearward to eject the spent shell, and then forcefully push it fully forward to chamber the next round. And fully is the absolute key word there.
And what if you don't do it fully? Like, if you're terrified, your heart is pounding at 150 beats per minute. You just absorbed a massive punch to the shoulder from the recoil, and you, I don't know, only pull that slide back halfway before trying to push it forward.
You induce a catastrophic malfunction. It's called short stroking.
Short stroking.
Yeah. The gun jams,
Yeah.
the empty shell doesn't clear the ejection port, or the new shell doesn't lift into the chamber properly, and the entire mechanism locks up.
Wow.
You are suddenly left holding a 6-pound club in the middle of a life-threatening emergency.
That is terrifying. So a missed or delayed stroke isn't just a theoretical mistake, it is a built-in human performance liability.
Exactly.
You have to consciously perform a complex, forceful, two-way physical action to make the gun work again right when your brain has minimal processing bandwidth.
We really have to separate the engineering definition of simple from the human performance definition of simple.
Right, because simple is absolutely not the same thing as easy under chaos.
Exactly. A pump action might have fewer tiny moving parts internally, making it mechanically simple for an engineer to build. But it is vastly more complex for the operator when their brain is in fight or flight mode.
You are asking a chemically altered, panicked brain to remember to aggressively cycle a slide back and forth while recovering from a massive recoil impulse.
It's a huge ask.
So picture this reality for a second, listener. You are navigating a tight, dark hallway with a 39-inch lever. You are managing heavy, punishing recoil. Your hands are clumsy from vasoconstriction, and you're trying to remember to fully rack the manual action under extreme stress.
And if you manage to perfectly execute all of that, you still have to survive the physical environment you just created.
The noise. Let's talk about the environmental impacts, specifically the noise of firing a weapon indoors, because it is staggering.
The acoustic science presented in the source completely shatters the Hollywood illusion. Firing a gun inside a house is not like hearing a loud pop on a television screen.
Yeah, the NIOSH and CDC-linked acoustic research points out that the threshold for permanent hearing damage starts around 140 decibels. And just to give you some scale, standing 100 feet away from a commercial jet engine during takeoff is about 140 decibels.
Now compare that to the shotgun. A standard 12-gauge shotgun fired in a confined space like a hallway or a doorway reaches approximately 172 decibels.
I have to pause on that math for a second. 140 to 172. On paper, that only looks like a difference of 32 units. That doesn't sound like a massive jump to someone who, is unfamiliar with acoustics.
And that is the danger of the decibel scale. It's logarithmic, not linear.
Right.
Every increase of 10 decibels means the sound energy is multiplied by 10. So going from 140 to 172 isn't just 30 units louder. It means there's thousands of times more acoustic energy physically hitting your eardrum and your body.
Oh my God, you are essentially detonating a flashbang grenade inside your own home.
That is the exact mechanism at play. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it isn't just about whether or not you'll need hearing aids a decade from now.
Right. It's about the immediate effect.
Yes. In the immediate moment of the emergency, an indoor shotgun blast is a violent concussive event. The overpressure wave causes immediate auditory disruption.
Meaning you can't hear anything.
Exactly. It causes total communication failure. You can no longer hear your spouse yelling. You can't hear if there are secondary threats moving through the house. And you certainly can't hear a 911 dispatcher on the phone. Plus, it disorients your brain's ability to balance.
You are blinding and deafening yourself while trying to solve a complex physical problem. But let me bring up the ultimate Hollywood myth, the one everyone always falls back on when you point out how hard a shotgun is to manage.
I know exactly which one you're going to say.
But with the shotgun, you don't really even have to aim, right? It spreads out. You just point it in the general direction of the intruder and you can't miss.
This is perhaps the most dangerous fallacy of all, and the article thoroughly debunks it using the ammunition manufacturer's own ballistic data.
Let's hear it.
Look at defensive buckshot lines, like Federal's flight control. These rounds are specifically engineered for home defense because they create highly controlled, tight patterns.
They don't want room-filling chaos.
Exactly. They are explicitly designed to avoid that. Their own testing materials note a maximum spread of about 12 inches at a distance of 30 yards.
Okay, let's contextualize that for a normal house. 30 yards is 90 feet. Most sight lines inside a residential hallway or bedroom are what, maybe 10 or 15 feet tops?
Frequently even less.
Yeah.
At a realistic indoor distance of 10 feet, the shot column hasn't had time to spread out at all. The spread is going to be the size of a fist, maybe a baseball.
Wow.
You are essentially firing a single, massive, aggregated projectile at that distance.
Which means you absolutely have to aim. If you buy into the myth, just, point it from the hip and pull the trigger, you will completely miss the target.
And the terrifying consequence is that you've just blasted a massive concentrated hole straight through your drywall and potentially into the next room where your family is sleeping.
The shotgun does not exempt the user from the fundamentals of marksmanship. It actually punishes the lack of it. Because if you miss that first shot, you now have to deal with that 172 decibel concussive blast, the blinding muzzle flash, the massive recoil displacing your balance, and the immediate cognitive requirement to manually pump the action again before you can take another aimed shot.
Exactly. The margin for error is essentially zero.
So, if the shotgun requires precise aiming, complex manual cycling under panic, and the physical resilience to withstand a 172 decibel blast, it clearly isn't an amateur's tool. It's not the easy button. What does it actually take to be proficient with this platform?
It requires an exceptional level of dedicated training. The performance research, citing work by Denoda and Huta, reinforces that operating a lethal force tool under acute stress involves complex motor learning, perception, and cognition.
It's not a skill you casually figure out on the fly.
No, absolutely not. You have to actively condition your body to bypass its own natural stress responses. Reviews of police marksmanship literature, like Seamus and colleagues, show performance is heavily dependent on physical condition and structured skill acquisition.
We hear the term tactical breathing thrown around a lot in these training discussions. Studies on it, like the one by Ibrahim and colleagues, come up constantly. What is that actually doing for the user in this context?
Tactical breathing isn't just taking deep breaths to calm down. It's a deliberate, structured method of controlling your diaphragm to physically lower your heart rate.
Okay.
It is a technique to consciously hijack your autonomic nervous system back to a baseline where your visual cortex opens back up and blood returns to your extremities.
And you have to train to do that reflexively while simultaneously mounting a heavy long gun to your shoulder perfectly every single time.
Yes, you have to possess the upper body strength to control that forceful recoil so you don't get knocked off balance. And you have to preserve fine mechanical control over the pump action while dynamically moving.
The hard truth is, buying a shotgun and leaving it in a closet is a recipe for failure.
It really is.
When you look at the raw data, a quality, service-size handgun often presents a much lower physical and cognitive burden indoors for the average homeowner.
Because it completely removes the manual cycling demands. You don't have to remember to vigorously pump it while your brain is flooded with adrenaline.
Right, and it removes the massive spatial constraints. You can hold a handgun close to your chest while physically opening a door or shielding a child with your other hand.
It's significantly lighter, and the recoil impulse doesn't violently displace your balance. It's about aligning your tool with what your body can realistically handle during an adrenaline dump.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? It means we have to be brutally honest with ourselves. This entire deep dive isn't about claiming the shotgun is useless or bad.
No, not at all. In the hands of a highly trained, physically strong professional who practices stress inoculation daily, it is a devastatingly effective tool.
But it's about being honest regarding your own physical strength, your actual training volume, and your technical discipline. Are you putting in the hours of grueling, stress-tested simulation required to run a manual action long gun in the dark?
And this raises an important question regarding how we evaluate risk and preparedness. How much of our critical decision-making is influenced by cultural nostalgia?
A lot, probably.
Yeah, how often do we listen to internet pseudo-experts who mistake loud bravado for actual analysis rather than looking at sober biomechanics and performance science?
We trust the cinematic law instead of the laws of physics. And I want to leave you with a final lingering concept to explore on your own, something that builds on everything we've unpacked today about human performance under pressure.
Right. If acute stress so severely degrades our fine motor skills, our spatial awareness, and our judgment with familiar mechanical tools like firearms, we really have to ask ourselves where else we are vulnerable.
Exactly. How much are we overestimating our ability to perform any complex emergency task? Think about it. Have you ever actually practiced administering traumatic first aid or applying a tourniquet while someone is screaming in pain?
Most people haven't.
Or have you ever tried executing your family's fire evacuation plan in pitch darkness while a smoke alarm is blaring and disorienting you?
We constantly assume our baseline competence will just miraculously be there when the adrenaline hits, but the physiological science definitively tells us it won't be.
If you haven't stress tested those emergency plans in a simulated environment, your brain might betray you just as easily as it would with a complex tool in your hands. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning conventional wisdom, stay curious, and remember, the next time you hear that iconic clack clack in a movie, You'll know exactly how much complex biomechanics and stress physiology they are leaving out of the script.